Okay, let's get some levels.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, you don't have a Shang-Chi song?
I don't have a Shang-Chi song. No, sorry.
Shang-Chi of the Ten Rings.
Oh, yeah, we're using that.
Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch. Movies, television, comics, and more. I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Join me and our cadre of co-contributors as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work.
You're listening to Avengers Chronological Countdown with Jamie and Ryan.
Everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens, and with me today is
Jamie Steens.
And Jamie, we intended to do Black Panther and didn't, but in the meantime, Marvel keeps pumping out content. I realized while I was brushing my teeth. We also didn't do a What If podcast.
Oh, right, we didn't.
What if we didn't do it?
That seems like it would be a little difficult to do, but we can do it at some point. Sure. So we are covering, finally, Shang-Chi today and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Yes.
So, yes, finally is not part of the title.
Finally, Shang-Chi.
Yeah, finally, Shang-Chi. So this movie came out 3 or 4 months ago theatrically, but since we are not going to the theater, I have issues, so we're trying to play it safe. We waited for the Disney Plus release. I don't know if you want to do a little recap?
Sure. Oh geez. Was it 1,000 years ago?
I believe it was 1,000 years ago. Yeah, that seems right. That sounds right.
Tony Leung was 1,000 years ago running around, and he came upon 10 rings from space, maybe? We're not sure.
I don't know. I think of them more as like being mystical. I don't know. This feels more magic than space.
I don't know. Sure. And they gave him great power, and he has lived for 1,000 years thanks to the power of the rings. And he has formed the Ten Rings organization. But he then met a beautiful maiden.
He was not using his powers for good, by the way.
Oh, yeah. He was super shady. He was basically a
crime organization.
I think they suggested he'd been Genghis Khan.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, not specifically, but yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So, or at least Marvel Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
So, he'd been a conqueror. And had set up this massive yet another massive shadow organization. And if you stick with Marvel Comics long enough, you're like, there's so many assassin guilds, they would all be just shooting at each other or shooting every important person on Earth like 4 times over. Like every time those people would go into public, there'd be an assassin on every rooftop. But point being, that's all before the movie starts. And he decides he wants to go to the magic land of Ta Lo.
I think so.
Which I did not remember from the Marvel comics. I should also say I never read Shang-Chi comics. They were not really a thing when I was coming up. That was more of a 70s thing. So, he meets this lady who's like, you can't go in there. And he's like, no, we'll fight. And she beats him. But he likes that. So
yeah.
They fall,
this is the first person that's ever been able to challenge him.
Yeah. So they fall in love.
She wins his love.
She wins his love. It's really...
By beating him.
It's really sweet and fairy tale-ish.
Yes. Yeah.
And beautifully shot. So they have their kids, and it's...
And he kind of puts the criming aside while he's got his family going on.
Yeah.
I'm leaving this life behind.
Yeah, I don't know if they got into shipping or what the Ten Rings was doing at that point. You do find out that you did see reference to the Mandarin, as you saw him in Iron Man 3. I think we talked about it in the Iron Man 3 podcast, but the Mandarin in the comics was kind of a guy who was a Yellow Scare character, but he had 10 magical rings, but they were on his fingers.
Actual rings, right?
Yeah, I just waved my the jazz hands at Jamie. So that you find in Iron Man, the first one, there's reference to the 10 rings, and they actually show that guy's photo in a dossier. The guy who had Tony Stark in the cave. That was supposed to be the Ten Rings organization. And then, of course, you had the Mandarin in Iron Man 3, who was a fake character. And then, of course, they have to make fun of the fact that, this guy was calling himself the Mandarin.
Yeah.
He's like, it's an orange dish,
Yeah.
and having a good laugh. So, anyway, the mother dies. They train young Shang-Chi to become an assassin from ages 7 to about 15.
But not his sister.
But not his sister, because sexism.
Right.
And he goes off. He's sent to go murder someone who helped murder his mother. And he basically goes, yoink, and takes off.
Yeah, it's
instead.
I'm not killing anyone. Yeah.
So he runs away. And he meets Awkwafina, and they become fast friends. And then she's gone to I think Berkeley was a suggestion. I can't remember. It was some prestigious university.
Yes, I think it was Berkeley.
But she's now still parking cars with Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
And for a living, because she can't figure out what she wants to do, because she's Awkwafina. And but then they get wrapped up when they're riding the bus. A one-armed guy comes at them when his arm turns into an amazing razor fist.
Shang-Chi possesses a necklace that these guys want that his mother had given him.
Yeah. And this sets them on the path to adventure as they are suddenly pulled back into his world. Awkwafina realizes her friend Sean is not who he's pretended to be.
Yeah.
And they head off to the Nameless East. I think they start in Macau, where they look for his sister.
Yes.
And then they head to Nameless Eastern Land. Mm-hmm. And then eventually go to Talo, and adventure ensues.
Yes.
And a big dragon shows up at the end, which was very cool.
Yes. So, I have thoughts.
Okay. Is this going to be Shang-Chi's a handsome man thoughts?
I mean, that's true, but no.
Okay.
Okay, now you've gotten me sidetracked. So I thought this was fresh and fun in a way that Marvel really needed right now. And I think that is threefold. So Endgame was supposed to be the end of Phase 3. And I know people don't, place a lot of stock in the different phases, but it was clearly a finale, a huge finale.
I don't know what you mean by that.
You don't?
No.
A big spectacle? And so after that, Spider-Man came out, the Far From Home, and it was a little bogged down because it felt so indebted to the mythology.
Uh-huh.
And then next we got Black Widow, and honestly I felt like I liked Black Widow, but it felt like 5 years too late. There was no sense of urgency because it took place in the past and this character's already dead, so it was kind of morbid. And then this year we got a bunch of new stories, which I really enjoyed on TV, but old characters, right? We have not seen a new main character introduced since Carol showed up in Infinity War.
Yeah.
That's been a long time. And I know the pandemic came along and pushed everything back, but because it's a new character, it just feels like just energizes the whole thing. Another reason was that something that we haven't seen in Marvel in a long time is people being wowed by the weird things that are happening around them. And not just the Awkwafina character who's there to be like, oh my god, my best friend can, do martial arts in a bus. What is going on? When they go to, what did we say that the magical land was called?
I think I'm saying Talo, and I have no idea if that's correct.
Talo. When they all show up at Talo, they're like, oh my god, it's weird horses and chicken pigs and a dragon. Everyone is just like, what is going on? Like, there's a sense of wonder that, like, helps bring the audience in to their sense of wonder. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is, like we saw in Black Panther, it's a new culture. Like, this is the first main character, Asian character that we've had. And not just that he's Asian American, but, they go to I keep trying to say the name of the magical land.
I think it's like 4 letters. I think it's like Talo.
Talo. Which is kind of a mystical place. And that's brand new. So anyway, all of that combines to make for just something very fresh and energetic to me.
Yeah, I think the comment I made talking to someone about the film was, if you'd excised, maybe 15 minutes out of it, you wouldn't have missed anything, and it would have been a fine. I would have perfectly. I said if you'd called it like Dave Kung Fu and not Shang-Chi, and as a known Marvel property, and everything else was the same. Remove Ben Kingsley, remove Wong showing up. Mm-hmm. I would have been like, that was super fun. I'm glad I saw that movie.
Yeah.
Which was what they did with the Phase 1 movies, right?
Right.
It wasn't really until you got into Phase 2 that you really kind of got everything was self-referential. And then, of course, by the time, as you said, you get to Endgame, it's like you had to have kind of been there for the full ride, or the impact is just not going to be there.
We're not going to have any previously on.
Yeah. So this seemed like it's a cool character. I wasn't entirely certain, so I don't really know Shang-Chi from the comics, to the point of, until I was watching this movie, I thought it was Shang-Chi. Since I was 10 years old. They
have the whole conversation on the airplane where, like, this is how you pronounce my name.
Yeah. Which was helpful.
It was.
Yeah. But, yeah, I didn't... he's a guy who does Kung Fu. And I like that. That's cool. But in the Marvel Universe, we kind of laugh about how Hawkeye has arrows. And even Natasha was, like, in the middle of the first Avengers movie, running around with like 9mm.
Oh, that was hilarious! Yeah,
it's like, what are you doing exactly to contribute here? And they just didn't show what she was doing to contribute. But so I was like, okay, so he's gonna, but by giving the 10 rings to him, they basically completely reformatted the character from the guy I know, who looked like something like a kid in the 70s in high school would have doodled. Like, I've got an idea for a character. It's Bruce Lee, but it's not Bruce Lee, right? Yeah.
Well, doing some reading, Stan Lee wanted to make this, like, earlier on, and he wanted to cast Bruce Lee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that's who they modeled it after.
Absolutely. I mean, so in the 70s, there was, you can see it in movies like Boogie Nights. Like, Bruce Lee was a big cult figure for dudes, like, in general, like, that enough so that by the time I was coming up in the 80s, we were still renting Bruce Lee movies, right? We just knew that, like, understanding who Bruce Lee was kind of a rite of passage as for, like, your masculinity, right? And because he was a different kind of masculinity, especially when you were in comparison to characters who were like Schwarzenegger and Stallone. And I mean, no one whooped ass like Bruce Lee. We'd never seen anything like that before on the screen in America. And so, of course, like everything else that comics do, they're like, that was cool in a movie. Like, the Brood and X-Men are clearly the aliens from Alien. You've not seen the Brood,
No.
but some of y'all know what I'm talking about. And, I mean, they were constantly in things borrowed back and forth from each other. But, yeah, I mean, he was part of the Kung Fu craze of, everybody's Kung Fu fighting, right? So, I mean, that comes from a place. And they also had the slightly, shall I say, in an era where they might not have been considering the Asian population, they also introduced Iron Fist, right?
Yeah.
So you have Danny Rand, who's the like, well, what if we had an Anglo?
What if a white dude did this?
Yeah. So, and that's fine. I don't really have a bone to pick with that. But I think you get something different when you get a guy who has the rich origin that's not the ripoff of Green Arrow origin that's kind of Danny Rand. This, and I don't honestly know. I didn't do any research before this. I don't know what Shang-Chi's origins were in the comics. He may have been a dude who'd always lived in New York and was just like putting on the red headband and I'm whooping ass. I don't know. But the tradition also of having kind of this hidden place that's kind of somewhere in the Far East. I mean, The Shadow was doing that in the 30s. And it was, like there were so many things like that from comics and Pulp Fiction that kind of is derived from. There's one, Deadman in DC Comics has one that's completely different from the one that Vic Sage is supposed to be associated with, who's the Question in DC Comics. This is at least one of two or three that's in Marvel. So it's fine. It's called Shangri-La. It's called all these different things in the comics depending on which character you're talking about. And I quit trying to keep track of all of them a long time ago, of all these hidden places, because I think where Danny Rand was a completely separate place. Mm-hmm. So anyway, it's I never watched the Iron Fist show, by the way. We heard it was bad and just didn't.
And then we saw his character on The Defenders, and he was indeed bad. He was just a bad actor and a bad character.
Yeah.
So I liked the way they did the origin story here, because they didn't bog down the entire first half of the movie with his origin. Like, the scene on the bus is the first indication that, oh shit, he's really good, but he's already really good. And then they do some flashbacks of like, oh, well, he trained with his mother. He trained with his father. Like, yeah, for years. Like, that's how he got this good. And it makes sense.
Yeah, I think uniquely to the Marvel movies, and it'll be different when they do Fantastic Four in a very different way, but it's the very first one I can think of, maybe Guardians of the Galaxy too, but where the family story is the story. Mm-hmm. Like there's a core of who was the mother, who was the father, what is their background, what's happened with sister, that I found kind of moving, as moving as I'm going to find something usually in a Marvel movie, unless it's Cap saying, Avengers Assemble, then I'm going to
very moving. And so it's a very common hero story to, the hero has to resolve both sides of himself to, become his true self. But I think what's unique about this is that in this story, it's both influence from his mother and from his father.
Yeah, it was
and
cool.
finding like the best parts of both of those people. Mm-hmm. Like his dad was a bad dude, but he had so much strength, mm-hmm. and he had the rings. And I love that the dad, like, oh my god, we haven't even started talking about what's his dad's name? Wenwu yet. Tony Leung, by the way, is I said Tommy. Tony is just freaking amazing in this. Like, so many layers. He could have easily just been like, okay, this guy's a bastard. But I loved that at the end, he didn't take the rings from him, but he gave the rings to his son.
Yeah.
Like, he could have easily, like, oh, I won these in a fight with my dad. I've defeated him. And no, it's like he gave them to him.
Yeah. The thing that was fascinating to me about that character, and I was wondering how they got him, because he's a real deal actor, right?
Yeah, and I was just astounded by this, because he's fluent in English, but this was his first English movie.
Oh, wow. I've just known who he is for so long, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
But he, I loved what they did he was a bastard, and when he lost his wife, he may have lost his way again, but he had in fact found, and he's reaching for returning to be a good person the entire duration of the actual time of this movie. Mm-hmm. He sends the guys after his son to get the necklace. No, not really necessarily. He hopes he'll come back. He thinks he'll come back. But his real goal is to go get his wife, because what he wants back is that family that he had. His memories keep going to his wife sitting there with the children, right? When he hears the voice.
Yeah. Which is the evil dragon that is trapped in Talau.
Yeah.
Talau? Oh, God. Never gonna get this.
Talo, I think.
Oh my God.
You can say whatever you want.
Okay.
Yes, and I loved that was. I mean, I was actually watching a video not too long ago on like things people are doing wrong in story writing, and one of them is that I guess there's this huge trend now for especially YA fiction to have villains who are going to be redeemed. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of raising an eyebrow at that, kind of going, okay, I mean, I can see if everyone's doing that, it's problematic. I mean, but I come out of comics and no one's looking to redeem Thanos, right?
Yeah.
No one's. I mean, most of the time, Marvel villains we just blow up at the end.
But there's a good. I mean, you can kind of incorporate that and do it in a good way. Like I think they did with Thanos. Like, don't make him a one-note villain.
Yeah.
But he's still a bad guy.
Yeah.
Like same with Wenwu.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna, and he was redeemed. He did the Vader remove the helmet, bit at the end of this.
Yeah, but they're still not erasing all the bad shit he did.
No. I mean, he's got to die, right? I mean, he's. I mean,
he never didn't love his son. Like that was always consistent, and it stayed through to the end.
He was going to win him over by doing this thing.
Yes.
So he has like legit motivation, and so I can see why they're able to get Tony. Like I know him, I'm calling him by his first name, but he's it's a cool role.
It's a very cool role,
and he plays it with some nuance, and I think well. The mother, of course, we don't get to see very much of, because she's just this missing piece, and without her kind of at the middle of everything fell apart, right? The
really fascinating thing I found out about the family is Wenwu pretty much just ignores Xialing her entire life. And she trains in secret. Like, she watches everything that's been done. So she trains herself. She's a complete badass. She goes and starts Fight Club by herself. And he giving the rings to her was never crossed his mind. I mean, one, he's 1,000 years old, so it's a little bit sexist. But she just like really never factors in. But she is more like him, I think, than Shang-Chi is.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
She totally takes after him.
Yeah.
And whether that's part of him ignoring her, or if that's just how she, is, I think that's just a really fascinating element. And then she takes over for him at the end. She tells Shang-Chi, I'm going to go clean up the compound. And what she does is, it's now equal opportunity. It's now 50% women, so she's like, feminism. but she's still running the crime compound.
Yeah, it was one of those beats of like when it happened, I was like, oh right, when he found her, she was running a fight club in Macau. She wasn't like doing charity work.
Yeah.
So it all tracks. It all makes sense, and she's got a chip on her shoulder for sure. I think all of her motives are pure in the film. I mean, as far as like when she's helping out, in Tallow.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't think they do anything wrong there.
She has. She's really pissed at her brother because when he left, he said, "I will be back in 3 days," and never came back. So obviously, she was a child when he left, so she feels, great bit of resentment towards him, and you see that through the movie. But he's still her brother. Yeah,
I'll be curious. I mean, we watched Red Notice last night.
It was free.
It was free and it was fine. But it was also a movie that knew it was trying to set up a franchise.
Uh-huh.
And so there were things it just didn't do and didn't go there. Because I think they were trying to hold off for this. And I think maybe this is the one thing from this movie that they're holding off for, like, well, will she be his adversary? Like, how will they have a relationship?
Oh, they didn't develop her enough?
I think they hinted more than they explicitly said anything about her, which is part of what Marvel is actually doing pretty well. Very infrequently, and it was, the big complaint about Captain America and the Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, was when he was Captain America at the end, he actually puts hands on hips and speechifies, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, people in Marvel movies don't, they aren't standing around being explicit the way even the comics are about what people's motivations are, about what, what people want, or where they're headed. They treat it like a movie for people who have a brain in their head to some extent. And which I know would just blow the minds of many of my friends who don't like superhero movies. But, I think that they actually do kind of try. And I think this is an indicator of, like, if you listen to everything she has said through the course of the film, that final by the way, we're having some trouble with the rewind and fast forward buttons on our DVR thing. We just got YouTube TV on the Chromecast, and we had to rewatch the movie at like 16 times speed, like 4 times.
4 times.
So we could finally catch, because it kept flipping over to the, like, if you like this, you'll want to watch Iron Man 3
we were trying to get to the end credit sequence, the second one, that's at the very end of the credits, and just kept flying past it and going on into Iron Man 3.
Yeah, which, I mean, I'm always happy to watch a Shane Black movie, but, whatever. So yeah, it was. I think that's the kind of stuff that they're still doing as well or better than they've, than people really want to give them credit for. It's something that your critic is never going to admit or talk about, or would say, "Well, you should be doing that." And it's like, yeah, but before Marvel, we have how many decades of superhero movies where they didn't? You more or less have Superman the movie, and then you have everything else they ever made. And so it's kind of remarkable that they're still kind of treating these like character-driven movies and really considering what everyone's motivations and what everyone's going to be doing, for the next 2 or 3 movies. I don't know where they're planning to go with all of this with Shang-Chi, because kind of the sky's the limit.
I would imagine in his next movie they would start incorporating him with the other characters. Like, that's what they do.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, he's already interacted with Wong to some extent, but the first end credit scene had Bruce and it had Carol in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, believe me, I was thrilled to see both of those characters show up again. So
yeah, which is kind of like, so you've got the mystical, and then you've got the science, and you've got the space, the cosmic.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Oh yeah, very clever.
Yeah, and all of them don't know what the 10 rings are, which was very cool.
Yeah.
The movie itself the visuals of it. I mean, clearly, you know, they borrow from the best. Mm-hmm. There's, if you've watched much in the way of high budget, you know, Asian cinema.
I mean, yeah, the whole Tao Lao Lo first sequence with them fighting was like, this is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Mm-hmm. And it was gorgeous.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah, and it's like, if you're gonna do that, steal from the best, you know. Do those things. It's fine. I do remember hearing in Asia, the audiences were complaining a bit because I don't know any. I am not a martial arts movie expert, but there were complaints that, you know, we're Americans. We're mixing and remixing. That's our whole culture. Mm-hmm. And I think what I heard was we mixed a lot of different styles in this, or Marvel did.
Yeah.
And so people were like, "Whoa, what are you doing? You just
read
dropped
everything that he trained in, like all the different styles, and it was a lot.
Yeah,
like he already knew a number of them, like Taekwondo and some other things, but it was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever done martial arts, you also know, like, if I almost got my black belt. I'd go to a story someday of why I didn't, but I'm 6'5", and they were not cool to me in tournaments when I was flying at people through the air, as I had been trained to do. I'll just put it that way.
They're trying to keep people people from getting hurt.
They're trying to keep people from getting hurt, and I was like, I physically don't know how to do this sport anymore if you're telling me to do it slower all the time. Yeah. So, anyway, but you also get kind of an understanding. But my understanding also is those movies in the different styles are filmed differently. Mm. And they were kind of like, it'd be for us, you know, if you like suddenly dropped an EDM beat over Beethoven, like it was like really jarring to those audiences. Yeah. But for a dum-dum like me, who's like, cool, a dragon. It all was fine. I hate to sound so ignorant, but it is what it is.
Well, yeah, they borrowed from some movies, but a lot. I mean, the first two fight sequences were really cool and really creative. Like, there's an entire first scene on the bus, which you're in an enclosed space. Yes, they've had people fighting on trains, and you know, Carol and in the subway. I mean, that's happened before, but I don't know. This went on for a really, really long time.
Yeah. So there was an actual San Francisco MTA driver.
Oh, I saw that. I didn't read it, but yeah.
Oh, it was so good. Yeah, it was so good.
Who broke it down?
Yeah, he was like, "Here's why none of this would have happened."
Yeah.
The first thing that would happen is if the brake line the air brakes were cut. There's a hard, of course, backup brake that would just stop the bus. Like, bam.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He's like, and the first thing a bus driver would do if they realized something was happening is you slam on the brakes and open the doors.
Yeah, let everyone out.
And everyone runs. He's like, we don't keep driving when something's going on the bus.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
The second one is on like the side of a building, like on all this scaffolding in Macau.
That was very Jackie Chan.
Very Jackie. Oh, okay, yeah. I guess that's fair. But also, so when we were watching Red Notice last night, there was another fight scene on scaffolding, and I was just like, oh man, this is not the same.
There was? Oh, right. Oh,
yeah.
the Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the museum.
Yeah.
With all the cops.
Yeah, I said after the movie was over, I'm not going to remember this movie in 72 hours. And already I'm like, what happened?
There you go. But yeah, and then I guess at the end, I'm trying to think of all the fight sequences when they're not only fighting the dragon, but like the villagers and the gang members come together to fight all the evil things, like squid dragons that come out of the evil cave. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, so a couple of things in there. Michelle Yeoh was in this movie.
Oh, God, yeah. I don't want to say she was underused because, I mean, that was her character.
I think it was they could afford of Michelle.
No. Well, it was more that I can always use more Michelle Yeoh.
Can't we all?
So yeah.
Yeah, no, it was. I knew she was in the movie because I'd seen her on the red carpet when it premiered. I assumed Michelle Yeoh's got better things to do than just go to random Marvel openings. So I was like, she's in here somewhere. She will pop up. And so I was kind of waiting for her to show up through the whole thing. And she's, perfect Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah, she's Shang-Chi's aunt. Really nice, good character. And then it's so the last thing I saw her in was she's just like, she's not evil, but she's just such a meaty kind of bad character in Discovery.
Yeah.
That this is just such like a 180 for her. So she's like, range.
Yeah, legit actress, yeah.
Yeah. And she can still move.
Yeah. So yeah, it was cool to have her show up, and I did like it. Just the design in this movie is just so cool. I mean, you have the Macau stuff that it's all very similar in some ways to what they did with the made up place in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Oh yeah, I can't remember the name.
Yeah, the name's escaping me right now. Madripoor. But that's kind of what, since James Bond, what they've been doing, kind of when they're like, "Oh, modern Eastern City, like let's show all the cool stuff that's there."
The neon and
the
punchy
digital
colors.
boards, yeah. But one of the things that really struck me, I rewatched the last 40 minutes of the movie.
Didn't tell me that.
Yeah,
cheating.
It's a good 40 minutes. They walk past, I think, a mahogany carving of like what had happened.
Yeah.
So you get kind of this visual representation before you see any of these beasties. And I was just like, who made that?
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was like, I don't care. I want that prop at home. That's beautiful.
It was a more practical way of doing like the cheat that I've seen numerous times.
The Lord of the Rings cheat.
Yeah, with it's CG, but it's like, oh, this is some weird liquid metal thing that's like, this is good.
Oh yeah.
I think they did it in Guardians. They did it in I think in Superman. Like the new Superman.
Yeah, the like nanotech suggestion.
This is like some Kryptonian.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say like the dreamy with like lots of fog and whatnot for the Flash, like telling the story. But yeah, I thought
this is an actual carving that's on the wall. That's what they used to. That's how they used to storytell. So
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but it did go left to right, I believe.
It did. You're right. For Americans.
Yeah. All right, you dum-dum, let's follow along. But yeah, it was. I thought it was really cool. Just kind of some of the design that they got in there, and the money. My God, they must have thrown at this cat. I mean, I know Simu Liu is. He's not huge.
This is his first starring role, but he's been in some other stuff. I think he wrote Marvel and he tweeted about it.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, I'm available," and then like a year later, when he'd been cast, he like re-quoted himself or retweeted himself, and he was like, "Hey, thanks, Marvel." That was very cute.
Yeah, he's a good one to follow on.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good actor, but then he also had much like Tom Holland, he had the background of like, well, he can actually do some martial arts and gymnastics, so we don't have to move. We have to train everyone, but it's not starting from scratch.
Yeah. One of the things, much like Black Panther, I found, I mean, I'm going to have to temper this statement a little bit, but the characters who are constantly talking in this movie, it's not Shang-Chi. That was probably the weirdest thing to me about this movie. It's like, part of why I rewatched the last 40 minutes was, I was like, is he just being reactive the whole time? If you compare it to Iron Man and Thor and Captain America, they go from being reactive to being proactive through the course of the film. Mm-hmm. I do think Shang-Chi does himself become proactive, but he's very much surrounded by his sister and Awkwafina and Katie in this movie. Yeah. And Michelle Yeoh, Nan, who are all the ones doing all of the talking. He's a very quiet character.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a lot of lines to say, which is... it's a different take for a character. I did want to hear him say more things. It was kind of weird that he seemed to have so few lines for being the titular character of the movie. I wouldn't say he was taking a backseat, but it felt... For someone who is like on the poster the movie was named after, everyone else is talking and he's always just kind of listening.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But I also think that just movie making in general, superhero movies specifically, are just angling more towards ensembles these days.
Yeah, and that's why I was pointing to Black Panther. Is like... You have these incredibly strong characters around him because you've hired Angela Bassett, and they don't want to overburden it with
I'm never going to complain about them
males.
Beefing up the female characters at all.
And that's why I was like, I want to be careful how I talk about this.
I mean, you do have a point. That is very true.
It wasn't just that there's... they get out of the car and it's him and Ben Kingsley's character, who we haven't even talked about. No. And then you have Awkwafina and you have, oh my God, the sister's name completely fell out of my head.
It's Xialing.
Xialing.
Yeah.
And her perfect hair. And they, it's the Awkwafina and Xialing are talking, and then Michelle Yeoh walks in and Shang-Chi's just kind of like, hi.
I'm here too.
I'm the main character. And so I would have liked to have heard a little bit more out of... I mean, I made my point.
I don't know. I wonder if they didn't do that because his dad is so focused on him that, I don't know, maybe they... I don't know. I always enjoyed the female characters being able to talk to each other, and they did that a lot in this movie.
Yeah, you don't hire Awkwafina and ask her not to talk.
Yeah. Speaking of Awkwafina, we haven't really talked about Katie yet. So, obviously, when you hire Awkwafina, there's going to be a lot of comedy involved, and she obviously does that well, but it didn't... Her character didn't evolve into, I'm just the funny part.
She has an arc.
She was the emotional support for him. They're best buds. Mm-hmm. And she actually gets to do stuff. Like, she's a phenomenal driver, so she drives the bus. There's this really cool driving scene where, another driving scene where they have to find Taulo. I don't know, it's this mystical shit where the forest is actually alive and it will eat them if they don't drive fast enough or something. But then once they get to Taulo, all of the villagers they know what's coming. They know that Wenwu is coming after them. So they're all training, and so she's like, well, I want to do something too. So they give her a bow and arrow, and so she starts training. And this part I actually thought was kind of interesting because she does have the heroic shot in the end where she shoots the dragon with the bow and arrow in the throat. And I think if this were a worse movie, I would be kind of side-eyeing that and going like, she just learned how to do this yesterday. But you know what? Beginner's luck, and there's luck involved, and that's what I chalk it up to. She's had enough training. She knows how to point the thing, and she just got lucky.
And I'll be honest. Once a flying dragon is fighting a giant bat squid,
that is very true, Ryan.
Whatever.
But anyway, so she has purpose in this movie aside from just being the best friend and the funny person.
Yeah, and of course, unlike Doctor Strange and all these other movies that come from a place where everyone's much more familiar with their origins, or they felt compelled from older storytelling aspects, she doesn't need to be the romantic interest. I mean, I wouldn't say they closed the door on it. It's not like she was like, here's my boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah, I honestly feel like they left it. They could go either way with it, and I would be totally fine either way.
Yeah. And
there's obviously a lot of love between them,
yeah.
And it could be totally platonic, or it could, be more.
Yeah.
don't care.
Yeah, and I'm glad they left the door open. And
yeah, me too.
It was, and they did do a good job of kind of setting up in little ways, like she's talking about Jeff Gordon, and like, you know, she clearly is into cars in a way that is Shang-Chi just doesn't give a crap about. So when you get the idea, maybe she's been doing some drifting or whatever.
Yeah.
And, so when she starts driving crazy, they you know, it's Marvel. It's one of those things that they're getting better. They're anticipating the questions nitpicking dopes like me are going to ask when watching a movie. Mm-hmm. I don't think other studios, Red Notice, are going to necessarily going to cover. You know, they're still writing movies the way they did in the 90s. We're like, well, we don't have time for that, or it doesn't matter, or the audience won't notice, or whatever. It's like, dude, the audience notices, and they talk to each other. Twitter has ruined movies in a lot of ways.
I remember when Winter Soldier came out, the Russo brothers, directors, actually came on the episode of Honest Trailers where they talk about why they said certain things, and they specifically said while they were making the movie they had the Honest Trailers test during the whole thing, like, will this pass Honest Trailers? So they think about these things.
Yeah, and I think it helps. I don't want to diverge too much. That's probably, I kind of want to next year do some podcasts on like basically fan culture in different ways. And one of the things that I think is really toxic are like the movie YouTubers, because they're always looking for gotchas. That's all they're really doing a lot of the time. And I'm half the time like, well, if you ever read a book, you'd know where they were coming from, you dumb YouTuber.
Well, also it's like, just enjoy the movie. Like when you're sitting there trying to, you know, catch the movie doing something. And I'm not saying you can't notice things, or, you know, things can't take you out of the movie, but if that's all you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, they turn that into their game, right? It's a game, but I definitely understand and appreciate the idea of, wow, that was so distracting. Like,
oh, sure.
Like, why was that guy, you know, on a cell phone in 1916 or whatever?
I say that a lot. Sure.
Yeah. It can be distracting, but anyway. Yeah. I do think that the movie, they thought about everything that was going to happen to a character, and whatever editing they're doing before they shoot is really, really effective. And to that point, you know, talking about the 10 rings and whatnot at the beginning, like, I remember watching Iron Man and going, it felt very of its time, right? They kind of did a reference, an Easter egg for people who would know, oh, the Mandarin is you know, that's the Iron Man villain. Ooh, you know, how clever, they dropped something in there for us. And then, you know, because I don't know if you ever watched the DVD extras, but they were talking about how that was originally supposed to be the villain. It was supposed to be the Mandarin, and they're like, whoops, that's Yellow Fright, and we're not going to do that. So they, and then of course you got the one in Iron Man 3, and I was like, I guess they're just never going to use these characters. Which is, you know, whatever. They've got thousands of characters in the Marvel universe. You know, if they're not going to use one particular villain, I'm not going to cry. It's like, I'm not freaking out because I haven't seen Hammerhead yet, you know. So it's cool though that they sat down and figured out there was this whole lineage, and by making it this kind of super shadowy foot-like organization. I'm saying the foot, like it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The foot is a ripoff of the Hand, which is the ninja assassin organization from Marvel Comics. Yeah. So most people, I don't know if people know that. That's where the foot in TMNT came from, was them ripping off Frank Miller's Hand.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So.
Something you said earlier about Marvel getting to a point where they are acknowledging that their audience has a brain, like something that you would not have seen in the early days. The first 10-15 minutes of this movie are subtitled. Like, they're no longer worried about, oh, let's bring the audience in, like, or let's not scare anyone away. Like, they know people are going to show up. And another thing that I noticed that they've gotten, maybe not done away with completely, but for this movie, was they didn't have any of the giant title cards anymore. Okay, you have to listen to where they're going.
Oh, they didn't go...
Yeah.
Berlin.
Yeah.
Which they did do in Red Notice, by the way.
I know. Believe me, that's what I was thinking of when we were watching it last night.
But yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I think part of that was to obfuscate where they were for the last 45 minutes of the movie, hour of the movie. Because if they start saying specifically it's in a certain location, everyone, well, actually, there's a subdivision right there, and couldn't possibly.
There aren't any chicken pigs there.
Yeah.
In there.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I did like what they did with all the different characters and bringing back Ben Kingsley's character, who didn't need to be there.
No, but I was a little worried when he showed up that he was going to be distracting. And I thought he was in there the right amount.
Yeah. Well, and they say why he's there. He's the jester, right?
Yeah.
I mean...
So they did a little short that was on Disney Plus that I had seen, but I didn't know that it was in canon with this movie. Like, I didn't know... Like, it takes place right before this movie and explains how they got him out of jail. And we didn't watch it until after the movie. So then, that could make complete sense to us.
I honestly hadn't... Was that new or old? I don't
think it came... You know what? My timeline is all off because this movie came out 3-4 months ago. It probably came out at the same time.
Okay.
But I just seen it on there before Shang-Chi actually showed up for free. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I would have... I'm sorry I didn't see it in the theater. I am still hoping...
I really wish we'd gotten to see it in the theater.
I hope studios will take people like us in mind. And
I really hope that, because Disney Plus did... Okay, so this one actually did come out in theaters, but there are a number of people like us that weren't able to go see it in the theater. So I hope they, take the chance and just when next year or the year after, when things have calmed down, have we're having a pandemic release and a post-pandemic release, and then they, people get to see it in the theaters.
Just release one a month.
Like this one and Black Widow and especially Dune are ones that I really wish I'd gotten to see on the big screen.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing Paul Atreides with the rest of the Marvel crew. That'd be cool.
Sandworms.
No, I know what you mean. I'm hopeful that they'll decide they're going to double dip on their theatrical windows, and I mean, I know Marvel has this massive slate coming. If you've watched any of the Disney Plus Day stuff,
just a little overwhelming.
It's way overwhelming what's coming.
Yeah.
I'm already making decisions about what I'm not going to watch.
Well, yeah, and some of it's coming on TV, and that's easier to see, but those are also multi-episode things. This has 8 episodes, so it's longer than a movie.
Yeah. And it's I'm definitely looking forward to all the things that are coming, but I am hoping that they're not just keep the machine rolling forward, never look back. It doesn't seem to be their MO, so hopefully they'll keep some of that in mind. I straight up really enjoyed this movie. We've watched a few newer movies lately that I've been, they're for, you're always well, it's for kids. It's so is this.
We're having a Rock in the Jungle week. We watched Jungle Cruise on Tuesday. You know what? It was fine.
It was fine.
I didn't have to pay for it. It was fine.
Yeah. I keep thinking back in the Blockbuster days, we keep getting you'd go to the Blockbuster and they'd have rent 3 for the cost of 2, so you're always walking around looking for that third movie of and then you're screw it, I'm just gonna grab Jungle Cruise because there's 40 copies of it here, and then you get done with it and you're well, it was free.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of how I feel about like that, and yeah, it's just kind of been a marathon of those things lately for me. So, I mean, not everything's going to be a gem that comes out.
No.
But yeah, I don't know where this is going to go. They have, we talked about Wong being in the movie, and by the way, we also didn't talk at all about the scenes where they're talking to their successful friends.
Oh, that was part of, like, when I was discussing how I enjoyed people being just in awe of, or talking about things like they're actually crazy. We're not used to seeing this.
Yeah.
When they come back from their adventure, okay, they're with their Normo friends at the beginning, and they're, talking about their very mundane, we park cars for a living, and their friends are very successful. And then, flip to the end of the movie, and they're like, we fought a dragon, and the world almost ended, and blah, blah, blah.
The best thing is how sincere Shang-Chi is being during that scene. He's like, we lost a lot of good people that day.
Yeah.
They're just like, you're making fun of us.
And then Wong pops through his portal. They're like, holy shit.
But it's also fun because it reminds me of, like, when I'd be reading, Spider-Man or whatever back in the 80s. And, Marvel things would happen, and, suddenly this guy walks in, and they'd always draw, like, the crowd reactions of people like, and if your whole world in a superhero thing is all you're seeing are superheroes, which is always ends up being my criticism of a lot of modern comics, is it's all Kingdom Come, right? It's all just superheroes and villains, and there's no context, and they're all fighting each other, and they forget that there's, like, actual humans out in the world. And this, like you said, like, these people are being introduced to it, but they're also still living in the real world. They haven't moved to an Avengers compound. Mm-hmm. They're not just hanging out with the Falcon and a talking raccoon all day. So, we still get that little bit. And they do say, welcome to the circus, your whole life's about to change, da-da-da-da-da. So we can kind of expect we're not going to see much of that. Although I hope we do see more of Awkwafina dealing with her family.
Yeah.
So I did like that they were able to pull that off, and then also humanize them. I mean, it ends with them with Wong singing karaoke.
Yeah.
Which you're like, right, these are all real people. Like,
yeah, exactly.
They might still be fighting dragons or whatever, but that's like a day out of, every 6 months or something.
Well, and compare that to the last Spider-Man movie, and his classmates are so conditioned to all this that they're like, oh, yeah, there's a new Mysterio. That seems normal. Which is part of the joke. Mm-hmm. But this seems, this is more realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes the Marvel universe more fun when it's cool that, like, in the, I'll give the Snyderverse or whatever a little bit of credit as far as, like, when Wonder Woman or Superman show up, it's like a god has just descended, mm-hmm. right? In the Marvel universe, it's more of you're out for drinks and Wong shows up in a magic circle, right?
Hey, can you bring Iron Man to my kid's birthday party? Like, that sort of thing.
Yeah. It's then that's kind of the difference between the two universes.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm really looking forward to wherever they're taking this. I have no idea where they're going to go. The 10 rings have been completely changed. I have not seen the Eternals. I was wondering if both the villain from this and the rings tied into the Eternals. Just because the Eternals are supposed to have been on Earth for a good long time, mm-hmm. At the beginning of that movie,
you'd think they would interact at some point.
Yeah, so I do want to see the Eternals for many reasons.
Get back to us in January whenever it lands on Disney Plus. Probably later than that, I would think.
I don't know. I might sneak out and go see the Eternals.
Well, then you have to take me.
Okay.
Go to a Thursday morning show or something.
But yeah, it's been a lot of fun seeing them bring in these characters who I frankly don't know anything about. So it's nice to not sit and nitpick and
yeah. Well, again, like when we've been doing the the Marvel movies. They're all of them that we've seen, if they're not brand new, are second viewings, or third or fourth or fifth, and we're very familiar with them. So it's easier to break them down and nitpick and, you know, say, well, this is the bad stuff about this movie. But because I just saw this 3 days ago, it's still fresh in my mind, and so I don't really have any negatives right now, but maybe on a second viewing.
Yeah.
But I'm not really looking for that.
Sure. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for hanging with us. If you have any other things you want to talk about around Shang-Chi, or you know, whatever's going on with Marvel, let us know. You can always drop, you know, comments on the blog, which is at signal-watch.com, or you can drop them on the SoundCloud, but I don't know how many people actually listen on SoundCloud versus other RSS fed locations. So
I do.
But anyway, keep in touch, and we'd love to hear from you. And anyway, have a good one.
Thanks.
That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed the podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. We'd love to hear from you, so find us online and let us know what you think. Whether you prefer email, blog comments, or social media, we'll be happy to hear from you. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies, you've got to be kind.